Isaiah Wooden is the next player up on our scouting profile series. So this is a nice little episode series that we have where RC's diving into undrafted free agents, later round guys or whatnot. Isaiah Wooden out of Southern Utah was an undrafted free agent by my Atlanta Falcons. RC, how did this wide receiver who stands at only 5'9", 170 pounds, according to the Southern Utah website, come across your desk?
Well, he came across my desk officially. I got the pro day results sent to me. So your 5'9" wide receiver is actually 5'7.5". So,
jeez.
Note that. But if when a pro day report can be shot my way, the more official one, not the hype one that either the agents or the player or the school instantly puts out. I wait for the official reports, as official as we can get from the schools. So you have to take them sometimes with a grain of salt. But so the Southern Utah one comes across, I get the wooden ones sent to me straight away because I look right past the 5'7" part and I see 4.38 40 time. So I'm like, okay, that's a start. That's a pro day, so that's maybe more 4.4s. But then I started looking down, and it's a 1.38 10-yard split, and a 1.38 is almost unheard of. I mean, I rarely see anybody. It's rare to see guys get into the 1.4s. A 1.38, I'm thinking, is this a typo? What's the deal with this? So, but it was the pro day result of record, so I ran with it. And I took it as, okay, now I'm interested. Let me look down the rest of this. Is this just a track guy? Is this a fast guy? What's this guy's deal? Then I see he runs a 6.90 3-cone, and I'm like, okay, this is not just on paper. This is not just straight ahead fast guy that has no wiggle, no agility. He's got upper end agility. So, but I'm like, these numbers are almost too good to be true, because I hadn't even heard that this guy existed back in probably April when I got the report. So then I see he has a 44.5-inch vertical, and I'm like, this is insane. These numbers are impossible. The time clocks on the speed times can be off, can be quick triggered in their favor. There can be a lot of things that can go on, but the vertical is a little harder to or near impossible, because it was videotaped. It's impossible to cheat. So if you got a 44.5-inch vertical, I can start to believe you run fast. Whether it's 4.3s and a 1.38 10-yard remains to be seen. But that's what comes across my desk on this player I'd never even heard of. So I'm like, we got to stop the presses here and take a look at what kind of player we got. So I flip on the tape real quick, and just to get a taste, just to see, and looks good from the first glance. A lot of high. It's funny. It's a 5'7.5" player that's high pointing catches on his highlight reel, and so I'm like, all right, the 40+ inch vertical looks pretty real. He's going up over the top of people making catches. He looks good. There's some breakaway moments where he's catching bombs. I'm like, this is something. I'm going to look further into this. So set him aside to do a deeper report on, and just some of the factoids about him. Because when I see somebody that has incredible athleticism at the lowest levels, I'm like, why didn't they go to D1? What did they tear up, Southern Utah? Whatever conference they were playing in, did he rack up big numbers? So I go look and see, and he's got in 2023 61 catches, 904 yards, and 14 touchdowns. So I'm like, okay, that's in 11 games. That's pretty I'll take that. I would hope for more, but we'll see if there's more to the story. Maybe he's got a terrible quarterback. Who knows? So I get all that basic information, then go back and look, and he started his college career in 2018 at Dixie State. He didn't get any D1 offers. He didn't get hardly any offers out of the gates. So he goes to Dixie State at the D2 level, I think they are, and does fine enough to where Kent State offers him, so he gets a D1 offer. Excuse me. So, okay, now I'm more excited. He got D1 offers, so there's something there that attracted attention. But then I'm thinking, how did he end up at Southern Utah? He winds up at Kent State, plays a couple of seasons, barely plays his first year, had a nice play or two in being barely used, but in blowouts. Then year 2, he barely plays again, and then he just, I think he leaves either midway through or after the season. He decides he's going to transfer because they're not playing him, and he goes to Southern Utah. So he's at Southern Utah for the last 2 years, last 2 years of his career. First year there was okay, and then this last year, his second year, he broke out. So it's really odd for a player that's would be that fast and that athletic on paper, that he would kind of bounce around and not really get any heat at Kent State and then wind up at Southern Utah. But Southern Utah got adopted into D1 level. I think they go D1 this upcoming year, but their schedule was transitioning, so they got to play like BYU and Arizona State. So he got to play against some D1 schools on tape. So when I got all of his background information, I'm like, okay, there's plenty here to dive in and investigate more on. Background check was fine. I thought maybe if he's bouncing around, perhaps he's got grade problems or some type of suspension or arrest, or that's usually the way it goes if somebody's crazy good and can never really get to the D1. But he's pushed to be, I was listening to an interview someone did of him, and he was pushing to be a 4.0 student. Like, that was the big effort of his that he was proud of. And he was talking about all of the summer jobs he had, and as he was transferring around, he wasn't getting, he didn't have any NIL money. He had to work to get pocket money as he was transferring all over the place. His dad was in the Navy, so it sounds like he got a real disciplined, structured upbringing, which leads him to his work ethic, which is good grades, and his body for 5'7", he is completely yoked, and he has got all of that 40-inch plus vertical, and there's some speed there. So the guy is not skipping on the gym, and he's not skipping in the classroom. So everything looks wonderful. But then I go and look at the tape deeper and spend an entire day just looking through different game tape, and I'm just aching for him to look like Tyreek Hill 2.0 is what I'm hoping to see with the numbers that I'm looking at from his pro day. I'm like, this guy's crazy. These numbers are stunning, and he's got a great background story. So it's like none of this really is all adding up, but I'm excited that there might be a hidden gem here, and perhaps there is. But as I was looking through the tape, I saw a good player that was, playing mostly lower level school, FCS schools and all that at Southern Utah. I had a couple D1 matchups, but it's mostly FCS or D2 type matchups that he had. And he definitely had some numbers this past year, but as I watched the tape, he wasn't really pulling away from, you would think with that speed, he would just be the fastest guy on the field. I noticed several times him getting bubble screens or short passes, and he'd have a lane. He'd be off to the races, it would look like, and then he would get caught from behind by a safety from UC Davis or from Sam Houston State or whatever. So if he wasn't, I was really hoping and expecting to see him just in a track race, leaving people in the dust. And he really wasn't that type of player on tape. He definitely had moments where he would sprint off the snap and get into a full sprint and go deep and have 2 steps on the corner or more and catch a bomb for a touchdown. But I thought I would see some jet sweeps and kick. He was I think he was a second team kick returner in his conference. He never returned a kick for a touchdown at Southern Utah, even though he took a decent amount of kick returns. Had a low kick return average in 2023. Had a low yards per carry on the carries that they gave him as kind of a jet sweep quasi running back, of which he played running back in grade school and thought he was going to be a running back, but he got converted to wide receiver in high school because they saw he was fast, but he wasn't that big, so they put him more at like wide receiver. So he's got some running back background a little bit, and I think he could transition maybe to running back, but I'm intrigued to see what he's going to look like in training camp. But I was getting ready to go, this is my guy. This is the one we put all the chips on at the lower levels. I can't go there because the tape did not match what I saw in the workout numbers.
Is it fair to say that maybe he has agility, he's really quick, right? But does he not have stamina to like sustain it and do those and like have those breakaway runs? Is that what do you think is causing it?
I don't think it's that, because he looks fantastic as just a physical body. Total muscles at 5'7". Looks like built like almost a power running, like a muscle hamster type at 5'7". And he can jump up and go get passes over the top of corners, really well. And he will beat coverage. He got a lot of his touchdowns sprinting off the snap and beating people deep, but that was more beating the lower schools deep. He wasn't as glowing when he went up against D1 competition. I can't say why the measured speed says one thing and the tape shows another. So I'm open to, could he have had a nagging ankle or knee that he didn't talk about, but he was still good enough to, have numbers. But he didn't blow anybody away at Dixie State or Kent State or his first year at Southern Utah. There's no evidence that he just walks into a situation and it's like, whoa, this guy is is a faster, better athlete than everybody else here. He didn't really stand out. He didn't look like a bust, but I was hoping that this was maybe some type of Tyreek Hill 2.0 hiding in the weeds, and I just didn't see that. He's got potential, especially as a kick returner with the new kick return rules. Because of his body, he's going to be able to take a beating better than, usually when you're talking about a 4.3s runner that didn't get drafted. It's somebody who's really wispy thin and is going to get broken in half in the NFL. That's not Wooden. He is definitely yoked. So maybe it'll just be as a kick returner. Perhaps he'll develop some more receiver chops at the next level. But I was looking at him and his get off the snap to get open, because I was hoping that maybe he'd be a gem there. Just, it wasn't there. It wasn't bad. I would just classify everything that his athleticism is in like an A grade almost in every category. Agility, B, C grade. but overall really nice. But the tape says this is more of a CD athlete that you hope, if I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan and I'm rooting for this guy, and I really am. This guy seems like a great young man and had quite a journey bouncing around to different schools, not for bad reasons per se, just looking for opportunity. Is perhaps with a little more training at the professional level, and if he's at full health, that the speed is there at the NFL level, that it's going to work. It's not going to be, it doesn't look like there's Tyreek Hill 2.0 sitting here, but it looks like somebody who could potentially hang in the NFL, and maybe it starts as a kick returner and he gets his feet underneath of him and builds from there to be a slot wide receiver. He said that's watching an interview with him. He said the NFL teams were looking at him in the slot. So slot receiver who could play some running back, and is probably going to get his chance as a kick returner. So I'm not closing the door on this, but I'm closing the door on this being Tyreek Hill 2.0, which for a moment I thought maybe this is what we've got here. We've got a super freak athlete hiding in the midst, but no, I think it's just a promising, of all the undrafted free agent receiver types, this is definitely one of the most interesting ones. Could be the best undrafted free agent wide receiver that comes from this draft, but I don't get the sense that the pending superstardom Tyreek Hill type 2.0 is going to happen here. But I'm not ruling him out.
Who do you think is a good comp for Wooden?
The comps, I did a full scouting report and put out comps on Fantasy Football Metrics this week. It was all obviously the smaller speed players. I don't know if you remember, this is going back some years. Do you remember Mike Thomas, who was a little 5'7" wide receiver? I think he played at either Arizona or Arizona State, 4.3 speed. And he went to Jacksonville, I think is where he had his best years. And he was a bit of a weapon, even though he was smaller. He was so fast and a good receiver that Mike Thomas had moments for fantasy, moments for the NFL, and was a pretty good player. Sonoris Moss also popped up as a comp. But when I looked at that, I'm like, yeah, that was, if Wooden was dumping into the NFL with these measurables 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, it'd be pretty unique. He'd have maybe more of a shot, but there's every depth chart, it seems, has 3-star wide receivers and then 2 backups that would have been starters 10 or 15 years ago. And a guy like Wooden might have get drafted 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but in 2024, with all the wide receiver talent that's been flooding in from college, he's undrafted. He's 6-year college player, so he's on the older side of things as well. Maybe he could have been an obvious producer 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now, boy, he's gonna have a battle to try to even just get to the main roster.
And it might have to start on special teams. Obviously, rules changing this year, so teams have to have not 1 but 2 returners on the field. So maybe there's going to be room for athletic guys like Wooden. RC, do you think Isaiah Wooden has any dynasty value? Would you advise anybody to put him on their rosters?
When we get deeper, most dynasty drafts that I deal with firsthand or through all of audience and subscriber questions is usually 5 rounds is the typical 3 to 5 rounds. So he's not worth 3 to 5 rounds. of a pick. But for those, we've got folks that are in 32 team dynasty leagues, that like a full NFL roster. I mean, then you're talking Wooden would be somebody to look at with your later picks. That's not going to be on many radars. So he's someone. There's three wide receivers that jump out at me that I'm going to be watching in the preseason just to see how they handle being thrown into, a higher level of competition than what they're used to. Wooden is one of them. John Giles from West Florida, that's now with the Giants, was the best undrafted free agent wide receiver talent I've seen, and he played against some D1 at the Hula Bowl All-Star game and accounted for himself well. Cole Burgess from Cortland State that ended up going with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's got such a loaded roster. I don't even know how he's going to make a dent in that thing, but he's probably the second best receiver that I saw the undrafted free agents. And then Wooden is obviously in that top three, and he may be third of the group. Definitely one I'm going to watch and see what the reality is. Sometimes these guys look a certain way at the lower levels in college, and then they shock me with, they turn it on in the pros, or something happened, or they trained hard, something happened, and they look much faster in the pros. It's rare, but it happens. So I'm going to be looking at Wooden for sure. That those first training camp tapes, but especially the very first preseason game, I'm going to be looking to see what he looks like speed-wise compared to the other professional athletes. So he's definitely on the watch list, but I don't think anything is imminent.
RC, as a longtime follower of FF metrics, all the later round wide receivers that you've scouted throughout the years, I mean, you've seen Tyreek Hill before he was coming, Devontae Adams when he was just a a late draft pick, and obviously coming to his own with Aaron Rodgers. Like, what did you see? Let's use Tyreek Hill as the example, because I feel like he's, I mean, I guess coming from a smaller school, smaller in size. What did Tyreek Hill do on tape that made you go like, wow, this might actually translate in the NFL?
Tyreek Hill would be an easy one for me to turn to and go, I've been watching football, scouting it for fantasy, for dynasty, for betting for 15 years now. And every year I just get a little bit more experience and a little better at what I do. And I've got a library of tape in my head from watching all of these prospects in college in the off season. But then when the actual season hits, I'm scouting the preseason games like a fantasy dynasty professional and better, looking for opportunity. And then I watch every game in the NFL live and watch it again on tape during the week. I watch a lot of athletes moving against each other. With all of that experience comes guys that, what I'm looking for is guys that immediately make me stop what I'm doing. If I've got music playing in the background, or if I got CNBC on or whatever, and I'm watching tape in silence and I'm just looking through players, I want somebody that's going to make me stop all the things that are going on in the background and then go seeking for more information and go get more tape, because it's just obvious there's something different about them. Tyreek Hill definitely had that. I didn't catch it in college because he had such a background. I didn't know where he was going to fit, or if they were just going to make him a kick returner in the pros. So, but when I saw Tyreek Hill, when I saw the first play I had ever seen him in the NFL, I stopped the presses, everybody within the sound of my voice reading my material needs to do everything they can to go get Tyreek Hill. It was that kind of moment. I don't have that with Wooden or really any of the undrafted free agent guys this year. Last year, Emmanuel Wilson, the running back from Grand Valley State, when I watched him, that was a stop the presses moment. Like, there's definitely something unique and different and high end here with this guy. So Tyrell Williams, another blast from the past name, is probably the best undrafted free agent type, D2 type player, FCS type player that I saw on the tape, where I was just like, this is something special. This is something different than I'm used to seeing at guys at this level. So, and then Tyrell Williams ended up getting cut by the Chargers ahead of 53-man day. Nobody claimed him. He went on the practice squad, but then he instantly went up to the main roster, and he ended up sticking in the main roster. And at one point, they were talking about him being better than frustrating Keenan Allen, who was always getting hurt. Tyrell Williams was starting to become the number one for the Chargers when really everybody had written him off because he was a low producer in college, but it's because he played for a terrible school and offense. But I could see on tape something was different. So that I know it when I see it is what I'm looking for, and I just didn't see it with Wooden. But I'm open to. It wasn't so far off that I'm going to say, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to be following and tuning in on him, and I'll be the first to jump up and say, wait a minute, it's on. This is real. Something's happened.
For the full scouting report on Isaiah Wooden and all other content that RC produces just like that, to find the next hidden gem, ffmetrics.com. Go visit it, subscribe. You can get access to that full scouting report and all of RC's content. You definitely need it to have that edge in your dynasty, redraft, all your fantasy leagues, because that'll help you have that additional advantage over everybody else in your league. RC, closing thoughts, any last words on Wooden, or are we good to wrap?
Good to go, but we'll be following him. The scouting doesn't end here. I'll get training camp tape, and I will certainly be scouting him and reporting out on his every move that I see in the preseason, as I do with every player of note, or I scout every game of the preseason, break down the tape looking for somebody I might have missed in the pre-draft and summer process of scouting. So